When you start a fighting game, a big portion of your efforts will be dedicated to learning your character. What are my best buttons? What do my combos look like? Which setup should I be using? But this, it doesn't last. If you want to break down the journey to becoming a great player, a big portion of your time will be spent learning matchups. For sure, you'll still be adding to the arsenal of your own character, but figuring out how the opponent works is an endless task that can only be achieved through a combination of match experience and training mode. What I want to discuss today is a tool that makes this process feel easy, and it's called Replay Takeover. But to illustrate its value, we need to start by looking at some of the difficulties that learning matchups can pose. At all levels of play, the training mode side of this equation presents difficulties that evolve as you improve. As a beginner, like for your own character, you'll be trying to figure out the buttons you're seeing them press. What's punishable? What's an overhead? It can be a process achieved in game if you're able to fight a handful of characters enough times, but due to the nature of ranked and more generally online play, you're not typically having sustained sets versus one person and one character, just a steady flow of best of threes. A shortcut can often be going into training mode and figuring out how the button that hits you in game works. The problem being that if you're really a beginner, you'll have to scour this new character's move list until you find what you're looking for. Not a huge issue in most games, but for sure an inconvenience, and one that's exacerbated by the size of a title's move list. When you're a mid-level player and your skill grows, so will the complexity of your opponent's offense. You'll be wrestling with small adjustments like micro dashes between buttons, reaction checks, delays and option selects pretty quickly into your journey. It's at this point things get difficult. Situations will become far more nuanced, and you'll probably end up comboing training mode with watching your own replays, trying to absorb all the information about what's possible with their character and the counters to it, which will be time consuming, there is no doubt about that. Now, I am the defender of hard execution games through and through. It's just a skill I appreciate on every level. There is one flaw I will admit to it having though, and that's the impact on learning matchups. Most games have a range of characters with varying difficulty in execution, and this is fine. You pick at your level, or learn what's harder if it's interesting to you. However, if I'm learning to fight, say, Zato or Aino, these characters are notoriously difficult executionally, so if I want to figure out how to get around their setups or even their neutral, my execution now has to be pretty damn good so I can record it in training mode and figure out the counters. It's obviously not as difficult as actually playing the character in a match, but it's pretty difficult, and if you have bad execution, you don't really have any choice but to improve, and it's not even for the sake of your own character, which feels like a distraction more than progress, and it's an issue that can even affect the highest levels of play. And look, like I said before, a lot of these things you can learn in game, but the hours required hoping someone does the same mix up to you multiple times, allowing you to explore your options versus just getting a recording in training mode, is miles apart. Luckily for beginners and experts alike, Replay Takeover is a solution to these problems, one that literally every single fighting game should have. Implemented in the modern Steam release of Guilty Gear Plus R, this function is the greatest quality of life update I have ever seen. The concept is simple. When watching a match at any moment, you can take control of either of the characters and manually input whatever you like, while the opponent continues to do their actions from the match. Don't know if something's a cross up or not? Well, now you can get back in there and find out. And not only that, you can keep repeating the situation to properly learn the muscle memory required to deal with it. Every setup, every frame trap, every tick throw you've ever been hit by, and their counterplay is now at your fingertips due to this one function. It single-handedly removes the execution and knowledge checks needed in the process of labbing your opponent, which, as discussed before, are huge barriers of entry at every single level of play. Fighting games contain so many variables, and this is especially true for games that have a large vertical play space, or God forbid, a third dimension, and it can make figuring out why something did or didn't work feel near impossible using the record function. Maybe you get the correct timing on the string you got hit by, but the height could be slightly off. With Replay Takeover, however, you know that everything is exactly correct. In Plus R, you really get to see this tool operating at its full potential. The game has such rich systems, and you can see people on Twitter condensing hours of optimizing specific situations into videos, bringing out those last hits of damage that can be the difference maker. These sorts of holistic tools for improvement are so important for dragging players into our genre. Expecting a beginner to go through pages of tutorials is completely unrealistic, no matter how incredible those tutorials are. Having Replay Takeover instead, where they can go back in time and easily figure out for themselves what has gone wrong, will actually give them the knowledge needed to grow. Training mode tools are rapidly evolving, and I would love to get to a point where games can detect what you need to learn. It sees you getting clapped by dive kicks and then offers up a tutorial on how to beat them. Actually direct beginners to the strategies they need. However, that is only going to be valuable to beginners, unlike Replay Takeover, which helps everyone. And that is why, to me, it remains the greatest tool for learning fighting games that we have to offer.